Radix is a public, decentralized ledger built to support the creation of applications with focus on decentralized finance, also known as DeFi use cases. It uses a new consensus algorithm called Cerberus to help secure the network while giving it a higher level of performance, that is, scalability. That could be desirable to specific applications. Radix also features its own smart contract execution environment, the virtual machine, dubbed the Radix engine, which allows developers to map business assets to pre-built Radix components. The project is aiming to be an alternative base layer to blockchains like Ethereum or DeFi applications. Radix has a native token, XRD, that holders can use to participate in the network's proof-of-stake consensus mechanism and earn inflation rewards. Radix's current token, eRadix, or EXRD, is a placeholder ERC20 token on Ethereum that will eventually be exchanged for mainnet XRD tokens. In 2013, using the bitcointalk.org forums, Hughes started a project called eMoney. Between 2013 and 2016, he explored multiple option-based layer scaling solutions for decentralized protocols, including block trees, DAGs, and channel asynchronous state trees, before settling on a structure called Tempo. Dan started building Radix, a new base layer decentralized ledger protocol built to support smart contract development that featured Tempo at its core. According to the team, Tempo allowed Radix to hit high levels of performance during its testnet phase. Radix is still in development, but the next iteration of Radix technology is a three-phase commit consensus mechanism called Cerberus, which aims to further improve network security without compromising scalability. Cerberus will be complemented by the Radix engine, a smart contract execution environment that will allow developers to create new assets and applications on top of the protocol. Radix will first distribute its XRD tokens as an ERC20 on Ethereum to help broaden its distribution. The Radix team believes a diverse group of stakeholders is essential before launching a proof-of-stake network, to optimize staking participation and limit any supply concentration. In addition, integrating a new protocol into existing infrastructure, such as exchanges and wallets, can take time. Releasing an ERC20 might allow Radix to stage the integration process and give token holders more initial custody choices. The team eventually plans to transition XRD to its final native version once the Radix mainnet launches. Native XRD tokens will be used for both transaction fees and securing the network via its proof-of-stake Sybil resistance mechanism. Stakers will receive inflation rewards in exchange for locking their tokens on the network. The Radix network relies on two key technological features, specifically the Cerberus consensus algorithm and the Radix engine, that help it validate transactions and power decentralized applications, respectively. Cerberus consensus algorithm. Cerberus consensus algorithm is Radix's consensus algorithm that takes a different approach to sharding, a scaling solution for blockchains based on parallel computation. Cerberus combines three core insights. It uses partial transaction ordering over the commonly used global ordering. In the latter, all transactions must be placed on the same timeline. Cerberus presumes that each transaction can specify precisely which shards are relevant, and thus must be ordered for a specific transaction. This requires a specialized application layer that can specify how shards are used and relate to each other. The ability to identify only relevant shards enables Cerberus to employ a new form of BFT, which stands for Byzantine Fault Tolerant, style consensus, which Radix calls braiding. Typical BFT-style consensus mechanisms use 2 or 3 phases of signed commitments between nodes to finalize a transaction. Cerberus's braided consensus runs a single 3-phase BFT instance, called a 3-chain, within each shard, but braids these instances together with commitments provided by the leaders of the other related shards. This approach allows all relevant shards to atomically commit to transactions that might pass through multiple shards. Cerberus allows its 3-chain or 3-braid consensus processes to run in parallel. Each shard can reach consensus independently as needed for a given transaction. Radix engine. The Radix engine is a network's development environment that allows for the creation of smart contract logic and decentralized applications. This engine is a form of programmability based on finite state mechanics, or also known as FSMs, which are a class of solutions that is common in systems where predictable correctness is a top priority. To make the difference from traditional Ethereum-style smart contracts, Radix gives Radix engine smart contracts a name more suggestive of their function: components. Components attempt to more closely model real-world expectations for finance. They are built from finite state machine logic and define their behavior by actions that directly translate a discrete existing input, or before state, to an output or after state. More concretely, this means that components are defined by what is possible for that component to do via its actions. By defining components by their actions in this way, components potentially gain two important attributes when trying to avoid bad results. First, components can behave more like finance building block primitives rather than as black boxes, a precursor for application composability. Second, the use of components allows creators to directly set their own definitions of what should be possible for that transaction, creating explicit guardrails on what can and cannot happen, and creating the final output state. Components are executed within the radix VM, which provides the partial ordering that Cerberus requires to break consensus on a per-transaction basis. It does this by defining transactions as a related set of changes to state that are encoded across shards. For example, the ownership of two different tokens, or two pieces of state, may be located on two different shards, and so an atomic transaction that transfers the ownership of both of those tokens must correctly partially order that transaction relative to other transactions on those two specific shards at that moment. Token sales and equity rounds. Radix CTO Dan Hughes started raising money for the project way back in 2013. Hughes discussed his plans for the project on the BitcoinTalk.org forums and collected Bitcoin's contributions in exchange for future e-money tokens, which were later rebranded to Radix. The initial contributors from that period are referred to as the Genesis community. The community crowd raise ran for almost 4 years, between 2013 and 2017. That landed Dan 3,000 BTC in startup funding. Radix DLT Limited, the company developing the Radix network, later raised funds through a convertible note in November 2018 and an equity round in January 2020. In both cases, investors did not receive any tokens and instead received exposure to the 2.4 billion tokens that Radix DLT Limited will hold in its treasury via their equity holdings of that entity. Radix DLT used this funding to further develop the technology of the Radix network. ERC20 phase Radix will launch XRD as an ERC20 first, which will give early contributors the first opportunity to receive their token allocations. The team will distribute 4.41 billion as ERC20 versions of XRD, 36.75% of the proposed native supply at Genesis, 12 billion. Any remaining tokens will become available or start vesting once Radix launches its mainnet. The complete supply distribution for ERC20 XRD tokens is as follows. Community contributions. Purchasers in the token sale that ran from 2013 to 17 will receive 3 billion ERC20 XRD, or 68% of this initial distribution. Token sale. The Radix Foundation will make 642 million ERC20 XRD, or 14.6% of this initial distribution, available for purchase in an upcoming token sale. Any unsold tokens will go back under the Foundation's control. Radix Foundation. The nonprofit company that aims to support the adoption of the Radix blockchain will receive 568 million ERC20 XRD, or 12.9% of the initial distribution. Of this distribution, Radix Tokens Limited, a subsidiary of the Radix Foundation, will receive 200 million unlocked ERC20 XRD, or 4.5% of this initial distribution, which are expected to be released via a long-term liquidity incentivized mechanism. 10 million ERC20 XRD is unlocked as a marketing token float. The marketing token float is subject to a variety of different lockups. Developer incentives. The project will allocate 100 million ERC20 XRD, or 2.3% of this initial distribution, to ecosystem developers and projects to help bootstrap network development. Network subsidy. 100 million ERC20 XRD, or 2.3% of this initial distribution, will go to a fund controlled by the Radix Foundation to incentivize DeFi and performance-relative activities on the network. Mainnet distribution plan. The mainnet launch of the Radix ledger will generate and distribute the remaining 7.59 billion XRD from the 12 billion XRD initial Genesis supply. ERC20 XRD holders will be able to exchange their ERC20 tokens for native XRD on a one-by-one basis. The tracking and triggering of these milestones will commence after the initial distribution of the eRadix tokens, the ERC20 version of XRD, to token sale purchasers, and a reliable price feed can be established by the token generation event for the eRadix token price. After each unlock, the SMA measurement restarts from the first hour after the new tranche has entered circulation. This mechanism limits the frequency at which price-based unlocking can occur and ensures that a minimum of 7 days must elapse before a new tranche can be unlocked. The distribution schedule could take much longer if XRD does not reach these predetermined price milestones immediately. Genesis distribution vesting schedules. The publication of the Radix mainnet network will generate a number of additional allocations, including tokens that are retained by Radix DLT equity holders in the Genesis code of the network, as well as additional allocations for the Radix Foundation, Developer Incentives Tranche, and Network Subsidy Fund. All of these native token allocations will follow the same price-dependent unlocking schedule as the ERC20 XRD supply. The supply curve represents the minimum amount of time it will take for all native XRD tokens to unlock. This distribution schedule could take much longer if XRD does not reach these predetermined price milestones immediately. Ongoing emission. Radix will have an ongoing inflation distribution to reward node operators for contributing resources to the network. The annual emissions are set at 300 million XRD per year. The ongoing emission schedule will distribute a maximum of 12 billion XRD, therefore the network will hit its max supply of 24 billion in 40 years. The Radix networks also burns all transaction fees, which removes them from circulation permanently and lowers the overall XRD supply as network activity increases. Since the level of network activity is unpredictable on a day-to-day basis, the supply curve does not incorporate any fee burns. But note that the network may never hit its max supply of 24 billion because of these regular burns. Radix uses its Cerberus consensus algorithm, as described previously, to validate and finalize network transactions. This mechanism doesn't rely on the concept of block time and instead focuses on the confirmation of transactions. According to the team, Cerberus can confirm transactions in less than a second, which then become final in roughly 5 seconds. Thanks for watching.